but I had a sense that she really wanted to do it. So whatever.
Oh, okay. But it all worked out, like everything.
Yeah, I mean, we just had a couple, I guess she had to get an access code to host the, and then she had to get a hold of somebody because she didn't have the access code to start. So we had to do a lot of chit chatting, and so we didn't get the PowerPoint up like immediately. It took us a little bit. Yeah, you know, but we were able to chit chat.
Yeah, that's your skill. You're good with the small talk. You can keep
yeah, I
week to get into.
yeah, and then we had a little, you know, so you know, kind of started a little rough, but then it was great. You know, we kicked it well. It was fine.
I see as an attendee, I'm going to promote you to.
So Jules, you just got back from vacation. No, you were working.
No, I was on a shoot last week, so that's why I was like, I remember someone from CompTeam reaching out about last week, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be away that week. So yeah, but it went well. It was like an all day thing, and yeah, it went well. I'm like booking more content creation.
That's awesome.
Yay.
So, hey, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, everyone.
Good to see you.
Patrick, I love the color you're wearing, bright yellow. Hi.
Hi, is it Char? Is it pronounced Char?
Char.
Yeah, yellow is one of my favorite colors. I have way too much yellow in my closet, but
It's perfect.
thanks. Thank you.
One can never have enough yellow, Patrick.
I'm sorry, Sumit, what did you say?
I said one can never really have enough yellow. So
Oh, true. That is true. That is true.
I feel like I can't pull it off because I'm too blonde, and I feel like it washes me out. But yeah, I'm all pinks and reds.
No, Jules, I'm telling you, it pops. It gives a sunshine. It just makes you, you know. But red is also in my closet as well. I love red too. I went back and forth, red, yellow, red, yellow. Just
You're a primary color guy, which makes every color if you're an artist.
Hi,
all. And here I am in my dark navy blue.
That's all right. You rock it.
All right, Patrick, just to give you a heads up, we just have a few minutes before we start the live broadcast. We may have some attendees join in the Zoom platform, but then at the top of the hour, we'll kick off things live, and then we'll go through the overall presentation and just an introductory presentation where Jules will give you an introduction.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. And then so what happens is Jules will take us through the introduction, as I mentioned, and here I'm going to show your slides here real quick, just so you can see what they look like. Let me just skip back. Here we go. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, you see my screen there?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, we'll just go through these real quick, and then Jules will take us through the intro, and then we get to your slide here. Does that look all right?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Hey, Daniel, good to see you.
Long time no see, Daniel. Welcome back.
We're just getting organized here. So, yeah, I've been busy. Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy year for everyone out there, so it's been good. But so, and Daniel, I mean, actually, Patrick, you're from your area, right?
Yes, I am.
And how is it out there now? I mean, Jules is suffering from a lot of inclement weather in California. Sun's coming here, sun's going out.
Well, the sun is out here, but it is surprisingly, it's cold, and that's not our norm. We're normally 75, 80 by now. but we have like a freeze warning advisory, bring your pets and plants in type of thing. It's very odd this week.
Yeah, crazy weather everywhere for sure. Hey, so Jules, did you see what Daniel said? He said he saw you on an ad.
I wonder which one. I know things like that happen sometimes. Like my cousin, he doesn't really understand what I do sometimes, and sometimes when I do ads, I'm under a different name, like, you know, an actor name, and he'll be like, I saw you on this, but you were calling yourself Miranda or something like that, and he's like, is this you? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Why is someone pretending to be you? And I'm like, it's me. It's a script. It's a character. Calm down. So yeah,
That's funny. So they just they'll go through and it's like, today you'll be, you know, Miranda, the next day you'll be Susie or whatever goes with the script, huh?
right.
Hey,
So-
Jules, can you please send us a link? Because I want to watch you in action.
Oh, okay, I'll find some stuff, but I don't know, sometimes ads, like, you know, when I do something, I don't know where they end up sometimes. So it's sometimes you just
I understand. I would just love to see you act like a Miranda.
run.
You'll be sending out 8x10 autograph photos to all of us.
Oh, $30.
All
Maybe
right.
maybe I could use you as one of my actresses for one of my promotional videos.
Hey, you know, call me up. I'm available anytime. Always ready to work.
Well, Patrick, I'm excited about talking about this topic today, and I really like the title. You know, creating a legend in your leadership. So it's, you know, that being legendary is a whole new level. So.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to share the origin story as to why that even came about. But yeah.
Perfect. Well, one more minute and then we'll get things cracking here.
Yeah, I was excited when it was like, why be a unicorn when you can be a legend? Because Aussies say we use legend all the time. So I'm like, that's a good trigger word for me. I'm into that. So yeah. Or buzzword. I guess a buzzword. Keyword. Yeah.
Oh.
Trigger sounds so aggressive. Perfect. Oh, and Patrick, also, if there's as you can see, our chat is already, Daniel's very active in our chat, you know, bless him. So if people do have questions throughout the conversation, you don't have to really worry about you bouncing between the convo and the chat. I'll be there and filtering any questions or comments that come through. So you can just shine, be a legend, and I'll jump in when there's questions. I'll just unmute myself, so that'll kind of indicate I have something to tell you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Sam's sharing his screen, so I think that's my nudge to get things started.
So,
Beautiful.
one second down here. Let me go ahead and see if I can kick things off here, the live stream. And of course, Zoom is deciding to do all this crazy stuff that it's not supposed to do. So do you happen to see the right screen, or did that go away?
The slideshow,
Yeah, do you see the slides?
I can see it, yeah.
Have the first slide, the cover, yeah.
Got the nice picture of Patrick going on there.
And you're all set to go, good, Jules.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's do this. Okay, everyone. Hello, welcome to the People Strategy Forum. My name is Jules, and we're just so grateful that you could hop on here, whether you're hopping on live, maybe you're watching this recording later on, or listening to the podcast version. Doesn't matter. We're just happy that you're showing up and taking in, soaking up all this good, valuable information. So every week, if you've never been to a People Strategy Forum, we bring on a different guest speaker every week. There's different topics that we cover. And then we also have an expert panel of hosts to also jump in and carry the conversation. And today's conversation is all about why be a unicorn when you can be a legend. So we're talking about how to become a legend in your leadership with Patrick Sutton, who I will introduce in a moment. But before we do that, again, if you're a first timer here, you're exposed to us for the very first time, the People Strategy Forum is all about engaging and energizing and elevating your employees and company. So, don't just come today, keep on coming back, because there's always valuable information, not just from our panel, but from all of our guest speakers. We change it up all the time. So there's never, repetitive information, which is great. So to go on to our panel, just to introduce everybody here in case you don't know them. I know for a lot of you out there, they're very familiar, but we have Char, who is an entrepreneur. She's founded multiple companies in various industries, and she is actually currently working on a brand new business that helps the elderly. She is down in Mexico working on that, so that's very exciting. But she is a former HR professional as well, so she has a lot of that corporate background and knowledge and experience as well. We have Sumit, who is a people strategist. He is experienced when it comes to all things HR strategy. He helps companies transform what they were doing and helps them evolve into something bigger and better. We also have Howard, who is an expert when it comes to compensation and systems and helping companies go from the old school ways of doing things and transforms them by helping them instill new software and better compensation management. And we also have Sam, who is the founder and CEO of CompTeam. He created the People Strategy Forum a couple of years ago. So we've been going a couple of years strong with this forum now. And he is a pro when it comes to all things compensation, talent management, and rewards and strategies as well. Now that brings me to our lovely guest speaker. If you're tuning in live, you can see he's got that bright yellow going on, a ray of sunshine. So I'm sure we're off to a good start. We got the nice color going on. And Patrick, what he does is he is the head of people at MainStreet. He has worked with a few different startups, including DoorDash, and he has over 15 years of experience in learning and development. And as a head of people, he really oversees the whole people cycle at a company. So everything from employee relations to payroll, learning and development, compliance. So he has a lot of different skills under his belt. So we're very excited to learn about how we can become better in our leadership or become legends in our leadership. So thank you so much for being here, Patrick. And just to remind everyone as well, or tell you for the first time, if you have any questions for Patrick or any of our hosts, go ahead, put it into the chat. I'll be monitoring that. I'll be hanging out there. So please write anything in there for us and we'll relay those questions and comments. All right. Thank you again, Patrick, for being here. And we're so excited to learn from you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. And what a great introduction. Like I should record that to just jumpstart my day every day, but thank you for that. I'm excited to be here.
Jules is a professional for sure.
Absolutely. So
when I'm not being a Miranda, I'm an okay host.
Yeah. I love it. So we're just gonna jump right in, I guess, so I know some of you are probably thinking, why don't be a unicorn, be a legend. So thinking about this, and I'm very much a visual narrative storyteller type of person. So I have to give you the origin story. Where did this come from? So a few years ago, probably about 2020, 3 years ago, I was getting these calls saying that from recruiters saying, I'm looking for, Patrick, are you this unicorn? And we're looking for someone with these unicorn-like experiences. That was the buzzword, unicorn, 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 unicorn. And I appreciated that some of them like, oh, we see you have this unicorn-like experience, but I didn't really connect with the word unicorn, because in the way that I like to show up as a leader in my leadership style, it made me really process that a unicorn is a myth. So to me, I looked at it, it's kind of unattainable. And as we all know, as people leaders, we set goals every day, and we have to set realistic goals, smart goals. And so I really was like, I don't want to be a unicorn in my leadership, because I don't want it to seem unattainable or something that's not realistic. Because as leaders, we're responsible for coaching, mentoring, and there's so much support that we help shape the careers of other people, that we want them to know that it's believable and attainable, because they too will go on and lead other people at other organizations. And one day I want someone to be like, you know what? Patrick was a great mentor for me. He was a great boss or a great manager. And if you think about that, we've all had someone that has influenced us and motivated us to be where we are. And we talk about them. You talk about legends. No one talks about unicorns. So I said, I want to be a legend in my leadership and in my philosophy, adapting how I can be able to be that person that one day others will want to tell a story about, how to model those behaviors. And so literally I started to just think about what's 5 really strong ways that I've been able to show up as that legend per se in my leadership way. The very first one, and again, it's so simple, but yet, it's a good one. Vulnerability. Vulnerability, it's a strength and not a weakness. And I know right now we hear that you should lead with empathy, but legendary leadership, it encompasses being able to be vulnerable and leading with empathy. As we all know, the way we manage, the way people show up at work, that whole workplace environment is completely different now. 2020 was a reset on the entire atmosphere of how people show up and how people perform and do the work that they do. So as leaders, we have to be vulnerable. We have to be able to, if you're in a remote environment, or if you're hybrid, or maybe for some of you, you might be coming into the office every day, there's a different mindset that we all have when we show up. There's a different way that we're showing up on the Zoom right now. For me, it's a little bit making sure that my collar's right or that my glasses are on straight. But think about, as you're leading your team, think about that they're having to show up every day, being on camera. How do you interact with them? What are you connecting with them? For me, that vulnerability, it shows up in how you're being truthful. I don't know the answers to everything, and that's okay. Despite having been in the industry for over 15 years, and I kept it at the 15 plus, just because, hey, just like, I'm a person of a certain age, and I like saying I'm over 21, and I just stop it at that point. So 15 years of experience, it's kind of like, it's all right to not know all the answers, but to be able to say, you know what, as a leader, I don't have those answers, but I'm going to find them, or we can discover it together, And so being legendary means being vulnerable. People will remember that. Because remember, people always say it, people will remember how you made them feel. And that's part of leading that strategy, whether you're leading as an HR leader or if you're a chief people officer, regardless, whatever that leadership role is, you've got to be able to think about how you build that connection. You build it by being vulnerable. It's the truth. It's that empathy. It's that connection that we're all looking for.
So Patrick, just a few things on what leaders can do to demonstrate that vulnerability. What are some of the easy steps that managers can follow to open themselves up and become more human?
I think one of the things is just, I drink coffee 4 times a day. Yes, I know that's bad. But when I have my 15-minute huddles or my check-in calls with whether it's my benefits manager or my talent manager or whatnot, the first thing I do when we're on the meeting, they know that I'm very honest with them. Like, okay, I know this meeting is an 8:30 meeting. I'm usually a 9 o'clock meeting type of person. I haven't had my coffee, and I haven't had my coffee, so I may not process the right way. This is me being 100% honest. I may have just finished coming in from a run. I still may have on a hoodie. I'm letting you know this is where I'm at. And what that is establishing is it's just really just being an honest conversation. It's putting yourself out there. I'm not always in a sweater and a nice shirt or whatnot. There are moments when I do need to get it together. And I think we all can relate to that. Maybe the pickup line, picking the kids up from school, that was chaotic. And I show up and I'm like, hey, I'm not gonna lie. The pickup line was insane. Someone cut in front of me. I need a minute. And so that is something that could be relatable to people. We've all had different experiences. And I think people need to understand that even though as a leader, we all have those moments. It creates relatability. And it's also showing that I'm vulnerable to let you know leaders have moments too, just like you. And it's okay to create space for others to recognize if you're on my team and you say that I was late because I had to go do XYZ or this happened, I get it.
It's fun to talk about being vulnerable. I'm in the 15 probably plus category. And when I was growing up, it was all about, men have to be strong and know all the answers. And I think, of course, that's just changing. But I think it's also difficult for people to make that transition of like, oh, I'm the manager. I'm supposed to be the strong one in the group and I'm supposed to know all the answers.
Absolutely. And, and Howard, and we're in this, we're just 15 years, just plus, we still look good. We still look good. But you're right. That is the thing where that's what's so important about why I said that, 2020 was really, I called it the global reset. The entire world went on a reset. And also as leaders, that's what we had to do in the business world. We had to reset how we approach everything. And that's why I wanted to say, one of the things reflecting on just my journey and experience is that being vulnerable, it's not a weakness, it's a strength. It's part of who I am, and showing up like that, I think it's a game changer for how we move in this new workforce or this new work world, I think.
Yeah, no, it's great. It lets people know where your head's at and that you're a real person with the same issues that they're probably facing.
Absolutely.
And really quick, I would just love to tap into you, Jules, just for a second here. And because when we're talking about vulnerability and I'm thinking about, there's a lot of times where you get in front of the camera and of course you're expected to be perfect, and there's got to be a lot of pressure there. And I know that just being human, you can make errors here and there. So how does vulnerability come into play in your world? As being an actress?
Well, I think actually that's kind of the base of acting, is being able to be vulnerable, because you're taking on a character and you're sharing that character's story. And it is all about you have to be vulnerable. If you can't be vulnerable, you can't really be an actor, because that vulnerability allows you to relate to the character that you're playing. It helps you relate to the story you're telling. So without that, you kind of create this wall, there's, the people watching you can't connect. So that is such they talk a lot about that in acting class, because that is just such an important aspect to developing your character, connecting to that story and connecting to your audience. So without that, it's like you just got that wall up. And actually what I loved what Patrick was saying about just being honest. I'm sorry, I'm going off on the point a little bit, but how he was saying, when managers come in and say hey, I'm late, I also think that's kind of good in a way, because I think so many times people kind of come in rushed or stressed or snappy, and a lot of people take that personally. They're like, what did I do to them? Is something wrong? And they take it personally. So I think just having that open conversation as well, you kind of go, oh, okay, that has nothing to do with me. You can let things bounce off more. I think it just creates a better atmosphere, because you're not oh my God, I'm scared of that person because they came in all snappy or short-tempered or whatever it was. So I like that it's, we're starting to open up discussion more, being vulnerable, being more honest as well. So yeah, I like that point. I wanted to say that, but
Awesome. And Jules, I just want to add too, something that we didn't get a chance to really touch on from even your performance. I mean, talking about you as an actress, part of how the vulnerable part too, showing up and being authentic, and how being a legend or becoming a legend in your leadership. I'm also a filmmaker outside of work and a screenwriter. And so for me, the way that I show up, it is, and having taken theater, English major here, and the drama of being vulnerable, it's kind of something I adapted that I used to do, but it was contained, very similar to what Howard said. The philosophy used to be, you can't be vulnerable, you have to be kind of like this, which kind of goes against what you learn about being vulnerable as an actor. And so as a leader, especially after we had this global reset in 2020, I was like, my philosophy and the way that I want to interact with people and show up for my team, as well as my leadership style, has to have the vulnerability. I have to be a human being and say, hey, this is me. And I think when you do remove that barrier, it further cements a connection with you and your team, and they show up for you different, as well as the whole organization will see that, you know what, this is our head of people. Everyone can relate to having those kind of moments. And that's the narrative that I kind of hope to be able to continue to tell, and that others, as they're on their leadership journey or becoming a legend, will think of, what's the narration of how I want people to remember how I showed up for my team and at work as a leader.
yeah, I mean, if you think when you watch TV or film, it's the same thing. You relate to certain characters, like, oh, I'm like that person, or like I've been through a divorce, like I know what that person's going through, or like you cry, like I cry in dog movies all the time. We're all looking to relate to something. TV and movies tend to be an escape for people too. You escape from what's going on in your own world, but it allows you to just see aspects of yourself in those characters. So yeah, it's that connection piece. It's so important. So that's cool. You're a filmmaker, by the way.
Thank you. Char? Oh, I thought Char was going to say something.
Yeah, I just went, oh, yeah. No, I actually, I'm sorry, guys. I used to be an actress in high school. I use my acting ability throughout my life a lot, but I'm very happy to see like Jamie Lee Curtis getting her Oscar as a 64-year-old. That was out on social media this morning. And what I appreciate, and I'm sure Sumit would agree, is that we're seeing more diversity now more than ever. And it's every single category, and I don't need to list off every category. But what just gives me chills is I am curious, Patrick, why do you think in the last 2 years or since the pandemic that the openness to diversity of all different types has suddenly busted wide open? Do you feel that some of the global crisis has sparked that? And what's your opinion? And so I use film as my example because we noticed that film has really exploded in the same fashion. So I was just kind of curious, Mr. Production and Mrs. Actress. So I was just curious.
No, yeah, great question. And I think you're right. One of the things that I did is I created this program called DEI More Than a Buzzword, because just how the world, as you said, like things are more diverse and there's still a lot more work to do. But I think there was a new accountability placed on all of us, a few years ago, how we have to get better. It's a muscle that you have to continue to work in. In the tech industry specifically, there was a lot of, and still conversations about the lack of representation in tech, that there's diversity gaps. And there were a lot of companies pledging to increase, DEI initiatives, and that needed to happen. And I think there's a new social accountability that people are really aiming to want to see more diversity. even, with the Oscars a few years ago, people were championing, let's get more diversity in here. It did start to happen. We're now in a place where I think, because we're still kind of in a remote world, but people are having they're having time to think about things. They're creating their own businesses. They're challenging things in social media, whether it's TikTok, LinkedIn. People are holding people accountable for not sticking to their DEI initiative. So I think we're shifting the mindset and telling more stories to say, look at the beauty of when you let diversity in. What's the show, The Last of Us? I think that's the show that I just started watching. I mean,
yeah, I've been watching that too.
it's sci-fi, but there were some really beautiful moments of diversity in there. Like episode 3 was just, oh my God. For those who haven't seen it, episode 3 was kind of like this, it was an LGBTQ couple, and I didn't even see that happening, but it was kind of like a love story. And I'm not going to give a spoiler alert, but I was looking at it through such a lens of not even recognizing that this was a same-sex couple. I was just seeing it as, this is a beautiful story. Like, this is a moment. And I hope that others that watched it was like, they could see themselves in that narrative of that story. And so, long story short, because I can really think really long about it.
Yeah, and you and I could probably chat forever, because as my stereotype is the Barbie doll, stereotype. And I consider just dyeing my hair black so that I could just, be considered smarter, but, I could go on and on. We all face different types of stereotype. But I'm so thrilled to see every category at least opening up. I'm sure there's some of us on this panel that might not think every category's opened up. But I think that we're now finally having the hard discussions and being vulnerable and saying, yeah, I've made a mistake because I typecasted someone or made an assumption or assumed something. And so absolutely. And so back to the unicorn. I also feel that this particular DEI topic is a big factor of that, because in the traditional sense of corporate, the unicorn didn't look like diversity. The unicorn looked like a certain personality type. So I also feel there were, no offense to the 2 white males on here, I feel that they also are facing the aspect of not being the unicorn, because companies are so worried about being diverse, and not really looking at the entire skills and competencies and skill sets of the whole person. So I love that we're having these hard conversations, and they are difficult in any way. I will go ahead and quiet up, because I'm sure you have a lot to say, and everyone else has a lot to say on that topic.
What do you think, Sumit?
I always think diversity, we can never really have enough of it. And the latest buzz in the market is around AI and Chat GPT. In fact, a few minutes before we went live, I took out an AI tool for a spin to see if I just give it some prompts like, say, CEO, carpenter, cabin crew, secretary, etc., what other kinds of images it would generate. And no surprises there. When I gave it the prompt of president, 2 out of the 4 pictures it generated were of a certain person who had orange hair and was president of the United States, will remain unnamed for now. And interestingly, I didn't say American president, and I did not indicate my political leanings at all. But 50% of the images corresponded to one particular set of beliefs, let's say. And similarly, carpenters were of a particular gender and race as well. I didn't see too many people from different races. I didn't see too many people from different genders. And there was zero folks with any kind of visible disabilities as well. So that's the kind of technology bias that we need to fight, because one, of course, bias is prevalent in the tech industry, and it's easy for biases to hide. If you and I are in a conversation, it's relatively easy for me to call that out and say, hey, you know what, I don't think we're representing a certain group enough in whatever it is that we are creating. But with AI, the coding's all happening in the back end. So if I have conscious or unconscious biases, it's easier for me to hide them. And I mean, I would argue that unless we give AI better prompts and unless we consciously make an effort, we risk going backwards in the diversity and inclusion journey.
You know, speaking of that, because I had a conversation yesterday about AI and how, Sumit, how the thing is, technology, it's here, so we can't run away from it. And it is the buzzword as they're introducing it into classrooms. And you're right, there's so many biases that tends to creep in. And I use the example of, again, using film here, because that's that's my thing too. There was a movie called Minority Report with Tom Cruise, and it was kind of like using that artificial intelligence, saying they predicted that he was the one that committed the murder, and it was a little bit tampered with. And I use that as an example in my conversation about, yes, we will eventually have to absorb this new form of technology, because right now we're seeing all the bells and whistles and how it will influence, you know, classroom learning and even employee experiences. Maybe it'll be able to predict what kind of career you want, or what, you know, what's the right roadmap for you. But unless it is addressed that there is a need for, on the back end, the diverse thoughts and the prevent out the unconscious bias, it could end up going really far left, and it's a buzzword, and 2 years from now we're not even using it, or we're using it and it's really deconstructing everything that we've established to try to push forward. And so I think what we have to do is, the DEI narrative and the marathon, it's the marathon and not the sprint, is just really pushing, you know, the conversation, ensuring that these companies, as they do hire and expand, not to just hire everyone that looks like a particular person, that we are really getting that diverse group of engineers and product leaders and people, so that as we are building more in the AI world, that it is inclusive of all types, and the neurodiverse types as well, so that way it's not that we can see the benefit to the tool, and it's not just something that came in and went out like I guess corduroy pants. Does no one wear corduroy pants anymore?
Hey, I still want to bring those cords out of the I'm keeping them in the closet for that perfect moment of return. So but I think that's part of being a leader, is looking at these tools, understanding. I mean, because leadership is almost inherent in the name, is choosing the path, choosing a path, right, and leading people to that. And I think that we need to be aware of our biases there. And so Patrick, I mean, what can leaders do to be more aware of or self-aware of the things that they bring, and also to show the right path in leadership?
I think the first thing, I think the key thing there that we just talked is self-awareness. It's understanding that we all have some form of bias. I think we have to accept that we do. I have a bias towards Nike versus Adidas. I'm definitely gonna buy my Nikes over Adidas, because if it's my thing, and if I see someone in the gym with Adidas, I'm like, you're probably not getting a good workout on the treadmill, because it's not a Nike running shoe. And I know that's it's more of a lighthearted way, but it's just, as leaders, we have to recognize that it's the self-awareness of being able to accept that we do have these biases, and to ensure that it's when we don't address the biases that we have. And I think it's affinity bias, or like if someone went to this school, this person went to Harvard, so obviously this is the person we need to hire. Or this person, we have all these different biases that influences our decisions. And I think that can also create problems too. So it's that self-awareness of accepting that it is the marathon and it's not a sprint, and that we do make mistakes, and that as leaders, we've got to do more to expand our learning about bias and diversity. I say today, there's too much information out there for you in 2023 to not be familiar with different things around DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And if you're, as a leader, you yourself should be doing the work. If it's after work or during work, you should be going on, again, whatever social media realms you want to go on YouTube. There's so much information there to where you can learn and be able to talk to your teams about it. If you're at a company that has a DEI team, or if it's a small team, if you're on HR, it may be in that umbrella. I know as head of people, I lead our DEI work, but be able to expose yourself and your team to those conversations. Let's have the conversations in your Slack groups. Let's broaden people's awareness of the different cultural differences and expressions. Host small forums. Be that leader that will take a step to say, hey, I don't always get it right. Enlighten me. Help me to grow. Help me to be better when it comes to things that I missed the mark on.
Hey, Patrick, I have to comment about this. My background is working with huge major healthcare systems. I worked with regional directors of DEI. I couldn't quite understand why we were just looking at the numbers of quote minorities, whatever word you want to use, that we hired. And simply that was the only data that I was seeing. I didn't see any other data. And as the head of talent management strategy, I was just at the time, okay, this is a while ago, okay, a decade ago. I was wrapping my head around, why are we not expanding about just counting the number of minorities that we're hiring to something very deep and crucial. If I have a DII team, it's not going to just be with the recruiting department, right? So this one healthcare organization, there were 6 people under this individual that was the DEI team, and all they focused on was recruiting. So I think what I'm hearing from you, you're talking about going even deeper and going into another form of exercise. And me being what I look like, it was difficult for me to have that crucial conversation to say, this doesn't feel truly like true diversity and inclusion. And then you take a decade later and it's even more. So you don't need to get into the tactical logistics, but how do we open the minds of the leaders of DEI in the corporate community to stop just looking at recruiting numbers and move beyond that to do what you're talking about?
What a great question, and so much that I love that question. I think how do you do that is I'm going to try to break it in a couple of compartments in a way to one, it starts at the top as well, being, in that C-suite, reporting to the CEO like I do, having those conversations, talking about allyship. It really, and speaking of a few years ago, when I got into DEI, and not, again, it was probably maybe 10 years ago too, it was just the D and the I. We were only talking about diversity and inclusion. And I think people were kind of a little bit misaligned too of what that also meant. And I think how we change that narrative is by calling things out that aren't correct. In the tech industry, specifically the couple of tech roles that I've been in and companies I've worked for, one thing that I've noticed too is that I didn't see a lot of people that identified as female in engineering. Why do we not have female engineers? Why is the head of engineering not female? What are we doing to do that? And even from not just the talent, but what's the compensation structure like between men and women? We know that there are gaps there. There's still a fight for equality, for fair pay for women. Like the whole DEIB structure, it's really huge and it's a lot to tackle, but it shouldn't just be focused on making sure, because I think if you lead with the lens of just making sure that we have a minority person just hired or whatever, you totally miss the whole, you miss the whole journey, the whole mark of what it's supposed to be. And it's an entire exercise that requires people to have, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I've been in those uncomfortable conversations. And I think too, people sometimes feel a little like, can I ask this question? Whatever. You have to be able to create the safe space. Let's get it all out there. Let's talk about the biases that exist, and let's talk about what we're doing to change. Are we partnering with community colleges, or are we only looking at these top tier Ivy League schools? There's so many tables in which DEI, it's such a bigger thing, Char, and it's like, I think I would love versus just like really just spend an hour, but you and I just talking about the things, but it really, it's an education that you have to do. And it's also, I think it's an education opportunity that you have to do with your DEI team. I've been in spaces before too, where I've had certain people leading DEI that there were some misalignments because I didn't think that they understood the full spectrum of what the strategic goals should be and how to have that kind of influence. Because if you don't create the broader spectrum of what DEIB even looks like, you run the risk of then creating a new bias as to people then start to think that DEI is strictly just where you just hire that minority for a role, not how you grow and expand what that team should look like.
Well, and I'll also mention that there is a challenge culturally, even at the executive level, because I've witnessed 14 executives, and yes, a couple of Black team members, so concerned about their own jobs and the bureaucracy happening in the organization, just so worried that they were going to get laid off if they spoke out. And some of us, I call myself the Joan of Arc, because I've stood at the stake. I've been laid off twice because I've actually tried to be honest about this particular topic. So back to your unicorn, and which is really what we're talking about today. To me, I think it is. This is our legend. This is our legend. As legendary leadership, I do believe that let's stop looking for our unicorns and realize to break. This is monumental right now. This is where we leave our legends. I'll be the blonde female that stood in front of 14 executives and put my job on the line to say, this is not right. Okay. And so how do we help other people have the bravery and the strength to know that they may lose their jobs, particularly HR people and talent management people and DEI people, to have the strength to stand up and say, we need to make a change here. I know I just threw a big bomb. It's hard. It's hard for us in charge of these programs.
It's hard, and I don't think that, well, it's not a one size fit all either. You know, being, like you said, as a legend and have people tell stories, like is Joan of Arc telling the story about you. Legends have to, in your leadership, you have to be able to challenge the status quo. And maybe if you are in an environment to where you speak out against something and you're not maybe that's not the right place that you need to be at. And I totally get it. It may sound bad because we all need our jobs, but what a toxic work environment does to a person, the mental strain that it can do to you. I'd rather stand on principle and integrity of speaking out against something that was not right than to be silent and let it continue and be miserable and let that eat away at me. And I think that's the power of like having forums like this and being able to bridge a community of HR leaders and people to talk about what's working, what's not working, and how you continue to strengthen allyship. And, you know, again, I think when you get in a room like that, I've seen a little bit of it as myself, and I think you have a choice to make, and you decide at that moment, will I be complacent and just be silent, or do I speak out against something that I know that isn't right? And for me, I've always chosen to speak out speak out what's wrong. And I tell people why this is wrong. Do what you will with the information, but I've told you that this is wrong. It jeopardizes so much. It can impact the environment. A bad workplace culture really decreases productivity. And I think too, it really changes, you know, employee morale and everything with that. So I just think that you have to be willing to stand up. And I think that's what we have to do. You know, I was about to call you Joan again, but it's not Char. I think that's what we got to do. We just got to continue to build that community, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's not even going to happen maybe over a year or 2 or 3 years. We've got to be realistic to say that this is a charge we're continuing to work on. And it's, you know, we have to just celebrate the wins. They may be small wins, they sometimes may be big wins, and we just got to keep putting one block on top of the next until we can finally say we did it, which may not be in this lifetime, but
yeah, it's going to be a century. But we can do.
But I think that's you bring up a really good point, Char, and saying that, you know, when sometimes these discussions can be very sensitive and it can be very difficult, and it takes a lot of bravery to bring them up, and you know, overcoming that fear of perhaps losing your job and so forth. But I think that one of the most powerful skills of being a leader is going back to the theater and the acting and skills that we were talking about earlier. Is one of the most important skills is storytelling, right? Because I think that we can tell stories in a certain way that can be very convincing, and there's plenty of stories that are difficult to tell, and we watch these on TV, and sometimes they come through the news and so forth. But we through that narration, through that visualization, we can better understand the human position behind it. So Patrick, in your coaching of leaders, how do you guide them on the importance of storytelling, and also how do you lead them in developing that important skill set?
Sure. So what I do is, one, the transparency is always there. So I always let them know it's gonna get murky. It's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be moments where it feels uncomfortable, and letting them know that on this journey, I'm your accountability partner, but I'm also here to help you. You can ask me questions. We're going through this together. And as I stated, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, when I'm coaching leaders, especially on having to give difficult conversations, or maybe it's something about, you know, I remember, and I'll share this, and I'm sharing this broadly, but I remember at a company I worked at, a leader did not know what an HBCU was. And it was one of those things where I did a one-on-one meeting with this leader, and I could tell that, you know, you talk around a topic, but because you don't know, but I'm going to pretend that I kind of know. So I'm just going to like add more words. And if I keep talking, you'll forget that I don't know what it is. And I remember talking to the leader, and I said, well, when they use the term HBCU, it means historical Black colleges and universities. And I said, so some of the people that we're talking about, they went to a HBCU, that was the context of what they meant. And the leader was like, well, why was there HBCU? I said, well, I'm glad we're having this conversation. I said, I am a product of an HBCU. The school was founded in 1869. And then I could see having that moment of that conversation. It's like 1800, 1869, because I was like, people of color couldn't go to the other schools. And so they had to create their own. And it was the best 45 minutes conversation with this leader. And from that moment, we started to have more conversations as he wanted to understand more, because that was just, it wasn't his world. And what happened in that experience is I too was learning, because I was like, how is it that you're in this bubble that you don't understand? You know, it was, well, I don't watch the news and all these different things. And I think we got to a place of where the uncomfortable part became less and less uncomfortable, because one, I showed up for him and he showed up for me. And it was, here's some additional information. If you have questions, let's talk about it. How can you be more inclusive and understanding? Visit some of the local schools in your neighborhood, volunteer. And this was, of course, this was before the pandemic and all the changes where you could go to a school and read at a school or whatnot. Listen, you know, what are you talking to your kids about? This is how you broaden the scope and that increase that knowledge point. And again, it's showing up for people and creating a space to where it's a trusted space. As HR leaders, I strongly believe that you should be that trusted advisor. They should be able to come to you and have those difficult conversations. And also, as your job as a leader is to show up and support them. And I think that's probably one of the biggest steps that you should do in your leadership as an HR person is you teach, you advise, you coach, you help them to learn, and you continue to, it's all about that accountability.
Well, if I can make one more comment quickly. I also think as an HR leader, I took on an organization that did not have a healthy culture, and I bit off a bit more than I could personally chew on my own little island with 9,000 employees. So as an HR leader, I think also I would love to see more support for HR leaders to build the bravery, the confidence, and the coaching to learn how to, as Sam says, tell the story and have the confidence and be able to go in and explain. And just because I may look a certain way, that I can go in and help you, executive team, make a difference and be the legend and stop with the unicorn thing. So I think that is a massive need in our country and globally as well.
You know, and one thing that I'd just add to that really quick, because I think that the piece even talking about the historic Black colleges and so forth. I mean, if we think about back in that time, and we reflect on that now, and we're just like, well, wait a minute, that's segregation, right? But the thing is that was a great step forward at that time. It was imperfect action, right? It was not. It was, we can say in hindsight that maybe it would be nice if there was a better way of doing that. But there was action that was taken. There was allyship, right? Somebody made the decision to do the right thing, even though if it's not entirely perfect, they started chipping away at the stone to create opportunity. What do you think about that, Patrick?
Yeah, I would agree, but I would also say that I think, again, it's moments like that it's a part of our history. It's a part of our history. And I think, you know, I look at, like I say, I look at the institution I went to and the opportunities that it created for me. Like I went to Tougaloo College, but Tougaloo had a partnership with Brown University, which is an Ivy League school. I was able to go to Brown because of that partnership that they had with Tougaloo. So that, to me, even, again, not going to give the dates of when I was in school, but that was early on type of like the DEI type of training, because here I was going to Brown University, like Tougaloo College at the time had like 900 students, small liberal arts school in Mississippi in the South. And I was going all the way to Providence, Rhode Island And I don't know how many thousands of students Brown had at the time, but I remember walking around campus feeling like, wow, this is very different than when you're at an HBCU versus now I'm at an Ivy League and you're trying to find is your tribe, anybody that may look like you that you can build that relatability on. But it was such an experience because I got exposure that I got to build relationships with all types of students. I became friends with a Rockefeller. Like I would have never gotten that kind of experience, but it was through that partnership. So it's creating programs that allow for this kind of thing is what I think is, I want to say was the purpose of having DEI is there. It's to create opportunity, not just for, a person of color, but it's creating opportunities for women, creating opportunities for Asian American, creating for any marginalized community and person from any neurodiverse group to be able to be seen and have the same equal opportunities and footing. And I know that's way here, and I keep saying we're up for time, but that is where I wanted to connect that story at, Sam. So.
Perfect. Yeah, and I do want to come full circle because I know at the beginning of this discussion we talked about 5 things, right? And and we've probably covered and touched on some of these pieces, but Patrick, can you kind of go through these 5 things quickly, and so that for the benefit of our listeners?
Yes. So the first is vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness. Communication, and your communication should be frequent and consistent. How you show up and you talk to people on your team. I think it's important too. There's an unspoken skill of writing. Make sure that you're constantly taking notes. Legendary leaders, we rely a lot on technology because technology tracks our calendars and all that stuff. But if you want to really build relationships with your team and with your C-suite colleagues, keep a journal. I always take notes. This is my sidekick, being able to write down notes. I once led a team of 25. I at one point had 25 direct reports. The only way I was able to be successful for the 9 months that I had them was through having a journal to be able to keep track of it. The other thing that I want to say too, lead an assumption as a leader. And I say lead an assumption from a context of believe that you actually can do the work and that you are open to being able to grow. Having the assumption that, you know what, I don't know it all, but believe that things are going to go right. And when they don't go right, I can own it and say, I haven't made it to that point. I don't know what I'm doing, or being vulnerable about the carpool lane, the school thing. Be open to that. And last but not least, I call it NSL, never stop learning. Always, there's too much technology out there for us not to know answers to information. We've got to be able to hold ourselves accountable to wanting to stretch and grow our minds. And I think when we put in that work, it's a continuous process for us as leaders and for future leaders. And it's the last point, and I didn't want to make sure I forgot this. I didn't even put the note down, but excuse me, your method or your philosophy of being a legend, it's to think about what you said, Sam, that narrative. What does that story look like? How do you coach and mentor and champion for the things that are right in your organization? How do you show up for people? You do it because you have to lead with a growth mindset. You do it because you want to make sure that, excuse me, they will one day go on to be VPs and execs somewhere else, and they'll come back and be like, well, this is what I learned from Char. This is what I learned from Howard or Sumit or Sam or from anyone. This is what I learned. And so at the end of the day, when you have retired and you're in Cabo or Bali somewhere, you can just say, you know what? I've done a job well done because I've created the legend. I'm a legend. And so the next time someone say, hey, are you the next unicorn? Like someone said to me recently, I said, no, I'm not a unicorn. But what I am is working on being a legend because I want to be that kind of leader that people will tell stories about, and that companies will be like, when Patrick worked here, he did these things and others followed suit. And that is my talk for now.
Well, what a great message. Thank you so much, Patrick. Jules, what are people saying out there in the cloud?
We've got great session. Thank you, Patrick. we don't have any questions. But again, guys, last chance. You want to throw any last minute questions? But if I just think everyone's just been tuned in and listening. You've had so many great points. I just wrote everything into the chat too, the 5 points you just made. So, guys, screenshot that. Keep it handy.
That's right. And so, Patrick, as our listeners out there, some of them are not listening live. They're going to be listening into the podcast and so forth. If they have questions, how can they get a hold of you and learn more?
Sure, you can find me on LinkedIn, Patrick Sutton. I know there's a ton, but on there. But if you just look up Head of People, you should be able to see my. I should pop up, and if you're watching the video, you see what I look like, so you'll see my picture and Head of People at MainStreet. And I'm always looking forward to building that bridge of community and talking with others. So.
Wonderful. So thank you so much, Patrick, for being with us today. It's been a true pleasure. Great conversation. Loved it.
Same here. It was so great to meet all of you. Like, I got to get all of your information to follow all. I need to know, keep up. And I know I'm going to see you on television, Jules, and I need to know the next time I see you on a show.
For sure. I'm sure Daniel will find me somewhere again. So.
Yeah, and Patrick, I'll LinkedIn you.
Yeah, for sure. You can go to Jules.
I just put your LinkedIn link in the chat so everyone has it as well. So if you want to connect with Patrick, Sumit just said would help to have a LinkedIn profile pic in yellow, Patrick.
Right. Thank you all so much for having me. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate meeting you too.
Well, have a wonderful week, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. Well, I'm going to be talking about creating a wonderful workplace. So join in, and it's going to be a great conversation.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys.
Bye.